weightless, but not floaty. Blue pillars began to appear, and between them, orange light. The orange light began to move in patterns, and filled the space between the round pillars. A heaviness beset me in the binaural reading. At a time, there was a sound, a ringing from the north. And a bright red light, bright in color, but not in density. And from the east, there was a bright yellow light to follow, but bright in color, not in density. I shuddered amongst pleasant warmness, feeling all heady. Euphoria came down me and lifted me up to my very tippy toes. One can see that certain cults were driven out, slaughtered, persecuted, to the extent that some things were only preserved in the more dark, the witchcraft traditions. One sees how Hecate, with 9 daughters, became what people remember in some bents. And the Order of Nine Angles uses that 9 daughters of Baphomet aspect. The serpent is seen as the symbol of the lover or husband of the goddess or goddesses' figures. And the Venus entity seen as the sun. Now the sun ends up being torn apart and eaten by the mother. That bit there, does make you think of an eye being handed over. But it also makes you think of laurel leaves for the more Apollonian and ivy leaves for the more Dionysian. The 9 muses are divided into epic, historic, and lyric, tragedy, choral dancing, erotic or mime, sacred, astronomy, comedy. We have reference to the sacred mount of Boeotia, east of the Parnassus, and similar things of a peak and a dip. People talk about a 3 ages, right? And it's not fair to say that the Islamic age is the patriarchal age. Certainly in the Christian world and the corporate world, as much as they try to feminize things, there's certainly, almost all the top company leaders are men. So, but it's not valuing the aspect of the female and what the female has to offer quite as much, although it talks about empowerment and all that stuff. But anyways, because I don't mean that from a political standpoint as the issue. I mean, Islam doesn't believe in a male deity. It doesn't believe that men are different than women, as far as better, automatically. It's what people believe and choose, and it's based on their means. And people have complementary roles in society, and women aren't downcast because of certain strength or financial capabilities that they generally lack or don't do as well in, or you know what I mean, because they do better in some things. Like the idea that you see it, multiple children go up and talk at the same time, and only the mother understands. Maybe the father has autism or something, but it does make sense that as far as polytheism is concerned, that it started with not really matriarchy, but female entities were the only ones really considered to be divine as far as the gendered things. And the counterpart, there was a relationship, but it wasn't that the mate was a divinity. And eventually, they became co-part of the relationship, but the idea that pregnancy and all that other stuff was a mystery, as a lot of books like this would say, this doesn't really quite make that point, but some really go far in trying to assert that, they didn't know where childbirth came from and all that other stuff, and women were just this great mystery. And it's like, well, that's why they did all this astrological stuff of trying to figure out the moon and all that stuff, because they were trying to help themselves predict women. And of course, this book does go over what each of the muses would be. It has some interesting references to, like the cult would eat the afterbirth, and that would make it would bond with the mother because it, ate the bit that stuck to its head or something like that, or, and there'd be some ritual connection to that. I do think that some of this, as a goat and all that other stuff, the rabbit that lays the eggs, that's an interesting one. But again, it's the relationship to the mate figure. That snake represents the mate, and you got the sun, and the sun is supposed to, it has things to accomplish. That sun does. People thought that things could be chased away by women's nudity, attracted, obviously. Nowadays, we would not think that trolling would be fixed by, the famous attractive woman going around naked. We think that would increase it, right? Chivalry focused, of course, on the female. Chivalry not being just some silly, I would lay down my coat in the mud rather than say, walk around the puddle, woman, It was about service nobility. And it was about an emotional thing as much as anything else. Because the all-male trinity idea of Christianity and that sort of thing was, it was more of an intellectual development. It wasn't something people naturally and emotionally came to. And the saint cults related more to the idea that the feminine needed addressed. Joy was taken to be brief. Working for female entities was taken to be demonic. The sun was a star or planet. The mother, the moon, are the heavens as a whole. From northern to southern Europe was that idea of the nine. And the saint character was put in the middle of the story. And the saint, well, the saint tended to meet with the older one, and the saint, could resist the older one. And there was this idea of women's territory, and there was stories of pursuit and rape and all that, and some of them weren't literal, but there were places that were women's places, and if you didn't know and you encroached, you could be gang raped or killed as a result. And this, of course, had a dark and feminine mystical connection.